As a society, we know how important it is to be healthy. According to On Life Health Inc., people who are fit are also 4 to 5 times more productive than those who are unfit. In the next panel discussion, industry leaders are joining virtually to discuss on driving employees' wellness through digital tools. I would like to invite Partha Neog, CEO and co-founder, Vantage Circle, to moderate this panel discussion. It's my pleasure to invite the esteemed panel, Sandeep Chaudhary, President and member of Board PeopleStrong, Nitin Sethi, CEO, Human Capital Solutions, Aon India and South Asia.
Thanks for the opportunity to be part of this very interesting discussion. My esteemed co-panelist needs no introduction, but it's interesting because both of you, Nitin and Sandeep, have a rich experience in handling difficult HR topics across industries and across company sizes. And I think today one of the most important problem statements is around employee wellness. And of course, the focus has taken a quantum jump in this year. Some good things have happened in 2020, and I think one of the good things is back to the basics, focusing on what's important. And I think wellness is a very, very basic and important requirement. So with your experience, I guess it will be a very interesting discussion. While I'm just laying down the overall landscape, and then we'll go into individual questions, and I'll also add my inputs wherever possible. Now, everyone understands the importance of wellness. I mean, whether they do something about it, it's a different thing. But the importance is felt by everyone. But that's not what we are trying to discuss here. What we want to discuss is what's the role of the employer in employee wellness? What should corporates do? Should they do anything? If they do something, how much should they do? How do they go about running a wellness program? What are some of the best practices? What are the stumbling blocks? How to measure a wellness program? That's what we want to discuss today. And of course, wellness is a very broad concept, and financial, mental, physical wellness, etc. But because of time constraints, we'll limit it to just the physical and the mental wellness part. So let me get started. So and to both of you, maybe Sandeep can go first. A very basic question: why should employers be involved in employee wellness? Everyone is an adult. Everyone knows the importance of wellness. So what's HR's role in that, or what's the corporate's role in this?
Yeah, no, thank you, Partha. Thank you so much, ETHR, for having me here. I'm personally a very, very keen student of wellness myself. And I totally understand your question when you're saying it's a very, very personal choice. Why should somebody come and impose this on you? Why should someone else be making a choice for you, and so on and so forth? I live in a home with another 3 people, and we all 3 or all 4 would have different definitions of wellness. So imagine if you start looking for a consistent definition of wellness, or even more wrongly, try and impose one consistent definition of wellness in a corporate. I guess the question really, Partha, is about why and how. Right? I guess the reason why an employer needs to be invested into the overall wellness equation of an employee is for the overall reason of employee engagement, which I think needs little illustration or explanation, for the simple reason there is enough and more of credible research, and Nitin and Aon can talk a lot more about that, how highly engaged employees create peak performance for organizations. We've actually seen organizations over a period of time which have had better engagement. They've had consistently better business results to show to the analysts, to every other stakeholder. Wellness in that sense is, in my opinion, emerging to be a very, very critical part of overall employee engagement. And in my opinion, is one of that aspect of employee engagement which has the most measurable and tangible output related to it. Because ultimately, I want to be able to increase my productivity. I want to be able to somewhere start to manage my escalating healthcare costs. And the only way I can do that is if I was to invest a lot more in the preventive side of healthcare as opposed to the curative side of healthcare. So me bringing in the best of the insurance providers, having the best of the hospital tie-ups and so on and so forth is all needed, provided there is an eventuality of a health care for an employee and so on and so forth. But is there anything that I can do? What an employer is really supposed to do, in my opinion, on the wellness part, is not to do the wrong thing, which is to go and make a choice for Partha or for Sandeep. But really, what I feel an employer has a role to play is in creating that awareness around wellness, how it will help me as an individual not just perform better, but be a significantly more productive member of a family, of an organization, of the society. The second is about creating that access, because when I try and get access as an individual entity, I'm thoroughly confused because when we talk about holistic wellness and we're talking about physical, mental, emotional, nutritional, and so on and so forth, I have such a large community to go and find what is going to be the best for me that honestly, half of my uh, enthusiasm gets killed in how cumbersome it is to look for the right solution, which is relevant for me as a person. And the third is to make it affordable. So I just believe that it's around the three A's around awareness, around accessibility, and the third is around affordability. And I think as a corporate, if we end up doing a significantly better job of this, which is I'm coming to my employer to have one-stop shop for everything. Now, organizations like Vantage Circle are doing a fantastic work around the entire of the reward and recognition. The reason why you're doing that is because, again, that has a direct correlation to employee engagement. And that's one, but a very critical facet of employee engagement, just the way wellness actually sits in right at the center of it. And I was reading a very good article where organizations, some of the leading ones that have been able to be on this journey consistently for a while, have figured out that it is about my organizational empathy. It is about my organization resilience. And it is eventually about me delivering that peak performance with my team, which is healthy and willing to give that discretionary effort, which is not going to be available if I'm not dealing and having the most healthy and positive set of individuals.
Makes total sense, connecting wellness as or thinking of wellness as a engagement towards employee engagement. I think changes how you do the wellness programs, and of course, I mean, it touches upon the business metrics also. Nitin, your thoughts on this?
Yeah. So, I think Sunny did cover most of it. I would just say, if you step back into history, the start of all of this wellness stuff was more about companies going back and looking at costs. How do you reduce your insurance premiums? Then came things like productivity and how do you reduce absenteeism. But over this whole period of time, companies have realized to the point that Sandy mentioned earlier that ultimately it goes back and links to organizational performance. People come to work, they want to be happy about where they are. They want to feel good about where they are, and the more good and happy that they feel about where they are, they deliver superior performance. And integrated into that whole thinking is this aspect about, how do you feel good? How do you feel great about where you are? It's not just about the work you do. It's not just about how you get paid. It's also about, in a sense, in terms of what the overall wellness aspect of that stuff is. So I think that's where companies are beginning to integrate this. In fact, best of companies don't see this as just one odd initiative. Companies have, like companies have total reward strategies. Companies have total health initiatives, and integrated into that is, different kinds of initiatives and aspects around wellness and healthcare.
Right. I think very interesting because just like total rewards is an accepted practice. Now, total wellness is something which is, I believe, is picking up kind of. So yeah, so the importance, I think, and why employers should focus in this is understood now. But what do you see? I mean, are companies picking it up now, and is anything different in India compared to the developed economies? Importance is there, but why do you think there? Because we ourselves have seen a trend that in the last 6 months, the number of inquiries around our solutions on wellness have increased. But before this COVID thing, or before 6 months, it was very rare, and it was not like wellness was a new concept. Okay, but do you see? I mean, but your experience would be more. Do you see companies actually picking this up on the wellness as an integrated solution? Nitin?
Yeah. So, again, I would say, Partha, there are a couple of ways to look at this. I don't think it's a fad anymore. It's for most clients, companies that we speak of, it's people are thinking about this. Some are a little ahead on this journey. Some are beginning to take first steps in this process. There is no doubt that COVID has accelerated, the momentum or the speed at which companies were thinking of this, because as people started working from home, how do you keep people engaged? How do you keep people productive? How do you ensure you control levels of morale, stress? How are you able to coach employees? All of those things came under scrutiny, or there was a greater focus on this. So in that sense, it has accelerated. Now, to your question, that is it more in the West vis-a-vis India? Answer is absolutely yes. In most Western countries, most Fortune 500 companies, if not all, I would say an overwhelming part of them have wellness programs. I think the best of companies are actually beginning to say wellness is not just about one particular aspect. They're integrating and saying there are multiple aspects to wellness: health, emotional, wealth, safety, security, and those things. So how do you bring your best self to work? What does bringing that best self really mean? In some ways, but 30 years back, most people thought people came to work was because they got paid compensation, and that compensation was by and large cash. As that aspect moved from just cash to total compensation, I think wellness is taking its own steps to say it's not just about absenteeism, productivity, or it's not just about keeping someone fit or keeping my healthcare costs low. It's about making people show up at work and they feel good about it. It's about where they are over the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. It's not a transaction about someone coming to work. It's a long journey that I have, or a relationship that I have with my employee or my workforce. So in that context, most companies are building this program up. In India, I think there is obviously some way to go, especially for local companies, Indian companies. Most see this as, one odd initiative once in a while. You could run a stepathon challenge, or some kind of, gymming and some kind of something else. But I think more and more companies are increasingly taking a more broader perspective on this.
Right, interesting. So Sandeep, I mean, you at PeopleStrong also, you're working with a lot of companies. Of course, you are providing a different solution there. But since you work with so many companies, have you come across people bringing the wellness into more mainstream of HR requirements?
Yeah. We are, I would actually say that India is in the early stages of creating that awareness and that buy-in and that education with leadership. Today, if you look at either some of these initiatives or one-off programs are led by procurement, by HR, it's still not top on the leadership agenda. In fact, Partha, just as a run-up to this conversation, there's several leaders of very large enterprises who are a part of the same running circle that I'm in Mumbai, and I did pick up the phone and just kind of speak with them and say, you certainly have understood the meaning of wellness or fitness for yourself. What is that you've done at the corporate level? And there are several things that they've essentially done. Some of them were very, very remarkable. I was talking to Amit Mukim, who's the managing director for IQVIA, and he spoke about a brilliant campaign that he ran, which obviously came with its own level of frustrations and difficulties, but eventually was one of the most successful programs that IQVIA ran around the world. But one of the common frustrations that was highlighted by these leaders was, I'm a student, but a large part of my leadership still doesn't really understand the tangible benefit that they can actually get if they were to fully adopt wellness in their corporate strategy. So it is the CEO's agenda in some of those few corporations where I just kind of spoke as friends, but they are struggling. How do I get my other leaders to themselves step on? So one of the biggest learning agendas for some of these individuals was that before I make it into an organizational agenda, can I first bring in a very high touch and a personalized program for my leaders so that they start to see the benefit of that for themselves before they are able to become good ambassadors of this for their respective business teams and so on and so forth. The second has been around, once you have the awareness, you start to scout for what's going to be the best infrastructure or content that I can make my organization easily and make that very easily accessible. And they figured out that a lot of this was sitting in different places, and just kind of aggregating that was a lot of energy. And a lot of that was wasted energy. The third element of that was ultimately, it cannot be that you attack one part of wellness and leave the other part of wellness completely unattended, because that means someone who's looking at wellness as nutritional, as opposed to someone who's dealing with stress at work, will not find meaning in that initiative if it's just very, very unidimensional. I guess we've overall have come to a point where corporates in India have done a good job of educating and creating awareness of how our policies, how our leadership, how our office infrastructure needs to be a lot more nimble towards working mothers. Well, in many ways, I guess wellness is maybe at the really start point of how we started to create, and today it's a very well accepted norm within corporates that if I was to make it a lot better for working mothers to come and work in my office, I'm going to be significantly more successful, not just because of diversity, just because I immediately double my talent catchment areas. So now I'm going to be an equal employer, because it's not just men who can thrive in my company, but it's also equal number of women who can thrive in my company, which means I've almost doubled the kind of talent that I can access. And I guess a similar kind of a trajectory is what we hope to achieve in how wellness ends up becoming a lot more of a consistent norm, rather than just an engagement or an employee initiative, which is a fact sometimes.
Right. No, a lot many interesting observations and points which you made, and if in case we get time and we will discuss some of these anecdotes of different companies, how they go about doing this. A couple of important points. You talked about the tangible benefits which people look. So, and the procurement teams. So I have gone to companies before the COVID time, and I remember them saying that, even if I do all these things, my insurance bills don't go down, because it's the maternity bills is the highest and the parents cover. My employees will do the fitness thing, but the parents will still be taking the medical bills, right? So the insurance covers, the premiums don't decrease. And another thing was this centralized, pretty large organizations. Everyone runs their local programs. The local HR runs some programs, but it's not centralized. No one knows overall what's happening in the wellness front in the companies. Each one has their own individual activities and small kind of running yoga sessions and all those things which are great. So what I understand from both of you is that we are in the early adoption stage right now, but the direction is there. We will be going towards making it more mainstream in the next few hopefully in the next few months, but yeah, let's keep a realistic thing, hopefully in the next few years.
That created more collaboration and more contextual collaboration was actually wellness programs in this entire pandemic. Otherwise, everybody was just coming onto Zoom calls and MS Team meetings, right, and immediately just started with work. There was literally no time or no social time that employees were spending between each other. And there were several companies who did exceptionally well because of how they stepped up their wellness programs. They also realized that now when employees are just cooped up at home, there is a different level of frustration and monotony which is kind of setting in, and how do we kind of break that out? In fact, much of the attrition that has happened in the year 2020, when there was not so much of job creation, many people just left without a job, was simply because they reached the burnout level a lot sooner in this pandemic than what they've ever seen in their previous work lives. And wellness programs were one of the outside of work ways to collaborate, share, and literally end up celebrating and doing things together, which was outside of what you would normally do for business.
Yeah, no,
The other thing I would add to that is, the other thing about wellness also is that, like managing people is not HR's job. I think to the point Sandeep mentioned earlier, I think, at best, whether it's your procurement function or HR can put a strategy around wellness, but true ownership of a wellness program would come in when you have a leadership buy-in, when you would have management teams that would actually commit to this. So in fact, best of companies, take this to a level. So 25, 30 years back, well, leaders wouldn't measure engagement. It was always about business performance. Then employee engagement started getting measured. I think there are companies now that we have examples of which put some metrics around, wellness, and put them on their leadership scorecards to say how is the organization performing on this is an extremely important indicator. And that struck me because, Sandy spoke of attrition during this time and how burnouts and stress have potentially created more attrition than otherwise. So yeah, so that's it absolutely is on the agenda. It's a question of where on the journey are you, and companies, lots of companies run it as tactical initiatives, which I think is okay. At some period of time they need to start coming together to stitch a bigger story in this one. But without a doubt, I think most of India Inc. is on that journey and are at one place or the other.
So I think you've covered most of the points, but so that I just put a little structure to that. If, and both of you come from the consulting background, so if as a company I want to start a wellness program, okay, what are the couple of factors I should or how do I go about doing that? Couple of pointers, and what do you think are a couple of no-nos, which we should not do, if you have something, and I have some experience in that. I'll also add my insights to that. But Nitin, if you have something like, if I want to start wellness programs, how do I go about it?
So again, a great question, Partha. I think no particular order in terms of how this happens, but if I were to go back and look at how do big companies start off thinking like this, I think the first thing that they would do is go back and say, why do I really want to be doing wellness? What does it really mean for me? And what aspect of wellness is where I want to head to? Is it about health, mental, emotional, financial, what? So I think define that and then define pillars against this. I think the second part of this is and we've seen programs being successful, is I think companies go back and measure and ask for feedback, to measure current state, that helps them define desired state, and then continuously over a period of time keep measuring how are they doing. So if it's about physical wellness, if it's about mental wellness, and ultimately go back and link it to, I would say, engagement in that context. The third part is genuinely obtain leadership management support as part of this whole thing. Get your leaders to buy in terms of what do you do. The other practice that I've seen in some places is as you start doing things, it's not about just a team owning this or leadership group saying we are on board. I think companies form wellness committees, and those committees then start owning up the process in terms of what's happening in this. Create some quick wins, I would say, and more importantly, people say communication. I think it's it's a word that's been literally taken to its grave in that sense. I would say call it campaign. Everything that you actually take out, stop calling it communication, build campaigns around it. Communicate with or build campaigns with the same rigor that you actually take and build brands out, take messages to your consumers and customers. I think with same intensity, go back and do this. And I would say the most important part in this is, you don't get results in year 1, year 2, year 3. You have to stay with it. And I think execution is very important. That's why I often say the best book actually ever written on strategy is called Execution. until you don't quite do this year on year. One, you will never learn out of the mistakes, which is very important, and secondly, you would quite not know what this really means in the long run.
Absolutely, I think very pertinent. I've made a note of these points, very important. So, Sandeep, I mean, anything to add there?
I'll just say one very important aspect at the time that you're just embarking upon this wellness journey is get data. Employees and everyone else will believe in data a lot more than they will believe in your intent. And the reason I'm saying data is because most often we don't know the risk or the opportunity that we're sitting on as organization, as individuals. I still remember there was an organization that did a health risk assessment with their leadership. And a few weeks later, the spouse of one of the leaders called up the CEO and said, "Thank you so much for taking the initiative, because we just got aware of the scare that we were sitting on as a family." So data does create a lot of awareness of why this is important at an individual level. I do believe that if you're able to make it sound reasonable, and you're able to make it sound, this is for me as an individual and not for the organization, you will be successful at that. And personalize the entire wellness program. What I need is different from what you need, Partha, and cater to what my goals are on the wellness. And again, report back data as you see things improve in your enterprise.
Absolutely. So a great point. So I think my observations also, and when we have worked with different companies in the wellness part, very similar kinds of things. And just to add on a couple of things, one is the realistic goals. Okay, so everyone should understand where they stand in the journey. Okay, so you can't expect that you will have a full-fledged, wellness policy and programs, and then say, "Oh, we didn't reach these levels." It's not. So for everyone, it's different stages of the journey, and they have to set their realistic goals. It might be the simple one-off things also. Maybe you start off with the one-off things, kind of thing. Secondly, again, in terms of the realistic goals, don't expect 50% of the people to be using your app or wellness app. It's not going to happen. Okay, so have the realistic goals, because many times we go to companies and say, "Hey, we just had 20% people downloading the app or using some wellness tool and something," and then it did work. But 20% is a good number. Okay, if you can get 20%, it's the nudge which is required from a corporate. I think the nudge is required. Ultimately, people will take their own decisions. So the nudge and the incentives. The second part is about the incentive, which I wanted to make a point on. So we had this interesting company program where they said, "Can we incentivize them?" But then it was decided, what will 100 rupees make a difference to the wellness program for individuals? So what they said was, do a wellness walk from home. And if you do 1,000,000 steps, okay, if the company does 1,000,000 steps, then we give 10,000 to the Prime Minister's fund. Okay. Very nice way of putting a goal, an incentive. I mean, it just feels like I am doing something for the country, kind of thing there. So that was important. And the point which you made, just to summarize on that, I think we should have a goal post. I think Nitin and Sandeep both have mentioned that. We have to continuously measure that. The leadership, visible leadership participation should be there. And if they are not yet involved, maybe as Sandeep mentioned in the very beginning, start with some program for the leadership there. Some quick wins, of course, are required. Communicating in a campaign-based way, and keep the information fresh. Continuously send the campaign, but don't keep on sending the same information again and again. Keep the information fresh there. Incentivize and nudge people towards a particular behavior. Personalize some of these things. I think we should understand that this will take time. It's not going to happen overnight. So set some realistic goals and start. Everyone is at some stage. We can start and make some improvement. So I think this is a never-ending. I mean, this is a long. I'm sure that there are already events which are only around wellness thing, and we just have half an hour here. So this is all we can talk about. But happy to take any questions over the next 20 odd minutes. Thank you, Nitin. Thank you, Sandeep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for sharing your knowledge with our viewers. Ladies and gentlemen, show your active participation on social media by tagging us and using the hashtag ETHRNexTech.